Here we go again. This keeps happening and it's driving me mad. I don't know why it happens from both sides. There seems to be this idea that the way that we are right now, our morals and our values in society, in this moment, right here, right now, that is how all of history should have been. And if it wasn't, then they were a bad person in whatever time frame they were in, and so they must be erased from history. I'm not sure what reality people live in that they think that that's possible, but that's what keeps fucking happening from both sides, from the left and the right. What ticked me off this time was Laura Ingalls Wilder, the author of the Little House on the Prairie books. She had an award named after her that was basically a Best Children's Author award. They removed her name from it this year. It was announced just this week. Why? Because Little House on the Prairie has racist words and stereotypes in it. A book about a woman that was born in 1867 and based on her childhood in a children's novel sort of way, but still keeping the idea of her childhood intact. A book series based around when the author was a little girl. So about 10 to 15 years after the Civil War had ended, had racist and stereotypical terminology in it. You don't say. It's almost like, and bear with me here, the people of yesteryear used language in a different way, and what was acceptable then is no longer acceptable now. It's as if people's ideas about society and societal norms evolve over long periods of time, like 100 years. This is the same shit that happens every single fucking year with Mark Twain. His books, especially the Huck Finn one, is always in the top 10 banned books list because it says the N-word in it. And so many places want to ban that because, oh, he said a bad word that we can't say. Even though he grew up in the era where that was what was said, and he was one of the most accepting, tolerant, and forward-thinking people of his era. That amazes me that a person who was one of the most anti-racist, anti-slavery, pro-equality people of his era is still looked at and shunned by modern society because how dare his book, written in the late early 1900s, use a word that was commonly used back then. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Didn't he think about 100 years in the future when that would be a bad word? It's the same fucking thing with H.P. Lovecraft, too. You cannot, in modern society, say that you liked his works, that you liked Cthulhu's works, without first uttering the phrase, H.P. Lovecraft was a horrible fucking human being, but I really like Call of Cthulhu. It is basically a requirement of law, unless you want to be shunned by society, that you have to say Lovecraft was a horrible person. The man grew up in the same fucking time period as these other two. These people are all from 100 years ago. What the fuck do you expect? Even Disney gets this shit. Oh, Disney was an anti-Semite. A man born in around the 1920s that was really big in the 1950s. No, actually, he was born before that because Disney started in the 1920s. That was really big in the 1940s, 50s, 60s. Was an anti-Semite. Okay. What about the rest of society during that time period? Disney was no more anti-Semitic than what was the norm of any given person of the day. Am I excusing any of these people for maybe thinking racist things themselves, maybe being racist themselves? No. What I'm doing is I'm putting them in the correct placement in history as not a justification for it, but an explanation of why. Because, as weird as it sounds, context kind of matters. And that works with history, too. I really don't get where this idea came from that everyone has to have had the morals of today, no matter their time period. Because that's not how anything works. Someone explain to me where this came from and why it's so widespread. It is the norm thinking right now. And don't tell me it isn't, because, like I said, you can't talk about H.P. Lovecraft without saying, oh, he was a terrible, horrible person, but I liked his books. Wilder just got her award taken away because, oh, she said terrible and horrible things. Every time Disney's brought up, there's always someone that pops out and goes, he was an anti-Semite. I can go on and on and on about these historical figures because there are people that always find something that they did or said that was an accepted norm of the day that right now is terrible. And I keep saying this as well, but people don't seem to understand. So let me explain this as simply as I can. The morals and values that we have right now are going to change in the future. It could be 5 years. It could be 50 years. If we look back, if we're in the future, if we're 10 years in the future, and we're looking back to today, would you want people thinking you are a racist, you are a sexist, you are a horrible person for your views right now measured to the morals of 10 years from now? Or would you want the idea that, context matters, this is what we thought was the norm right now? It's so frustrating, and I don't know what it's going to take for people to understand this. maybe when the term racist, sexist, etc., when those terms lose all value like they are quickly starting to lose, maybe then people will start to grasp that, maybe history and context do matter. I don't want it to come to that. It's probably going to have to. What a world. This has been Math Machine, having to explain how history is different than the present. A concept that you would think any first grader could get, but here we are. Peace out.